This is Flick,
This is Rudy.
and this is episode 28 of the Left of the Dial podcast. Today, we will be talking about 80s cover songs on our Covers for Lovers playlists.
It's a big show. Unfortunately, part of the reason it's a big show today is we've lost some musicians this week that are important to the music we love and important to our own personal collections. We lost Bill Withers this week.
Bill Withers and Adam Schlesinger. We'll be talking about them, and we'll be discussing other events of the past week as well, which weren't so great, but uh, we will um, we will try to end it on a much cheerier note.
We'll come correct with the 80s playlists too, I think, today. So, big week, but a good week. That's next.
All right, this one you may well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The dream police. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people make a special effort to shop here. Mostly young men who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline, Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
All right, we're up to episode 28 here on the Left of the Dial pod. We have a pretty busy week here. We have a topic that has been a lot of fun, and now that I think about it, you and I have actually probably done as much off-air talking about this topic as the topic itself is going to get today. So this is a good one. Lots of news too, though.
Yeah, one would assume we're not going to talk as much on the show about what we've talked about it off the air. One would assume. We never know until we actually do the show, though.
Yeah, but this was a good one. Getting to our topic this week, which is going to be covers of 80s songs, covers of songs from the 80s or released in the 80s, ended up being a fairly interesting. We took the scenic route to get this one done this week, and it was very interesting, but it's going to be busy because, unfortunately, and this happens from time to time for us, we have some high-profile deaths in the music community that we definitely want to make some time for and talk about some careers and some music that's been important to us. And then we've got the new Bob Dylan, which we may have to, I think we're going to have to come back to the new Bob Dylan, but we at least want to tangle with it a little bit. So a busy week this week.
Yeah. And so this is episode 28 of Left of the Dial podcast. As always, we're physically distanced, as we've been since the beginning, and socially challenged, I guess.
Yes.
As always. Uh, yeah. So yeah, a lot to talk about. We're going to do 80s covers, covers of 80s songs later on. And to start off with, unfortunately, too much going on in the real world, and yeah, a couple of big deaths, for me, big ones, and unfortunately, that's not all that we're talking about. But Bill Withers died at 81 this past week. I think it was this past Monday. Died of heart complications. Most of the deaths that will be, that have happened this past week have been related to the coronavirus, and this actually is not one of them. But anyway, Bill Withers is somebody that I like a lot. I feel like most people know him for really just two songs, and they are two great songs, "Lean on Me" and "Ain't No Sunshine." "Ain't No Sunshine" to me is like one of the most heart-wrenching songs anybody ever wrote, and it was a song that I featured on my Valentine's Day list this past in February, obviously. Um, a song that I love a lot, but he had so much more than that as far as songs go. He had, just to me, like one of the all-time debut albums, the 1971 debut, "Just As I Am," which, by the way, produced by Booker T. Jones of Booker T. and the MGs, and featured most of the MGs. Unfortunately, did not feature Steve Cropper on guitar, but did feature Stephen Stills as well as Chris Etheridge. So he even had a Burrito Brother on his debut album.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, just not really a dead spot on that. That is a thoroughly great album, and like I said, one of the all-time best debut albums. Had just really great output all throughout the 70s, and then just kind of walked away from it. Just didn't really like playing the game, the music business game, and walked away. Had a comeback album in 1985, and then that was it. That was basically, like, he didn't stop making music throughout his life. He had a home studio, and he never really stopped making music and recording music, but did step away from the music business. And from everything I know about the music business, that is completely understandable. But when he was putting stuff on wax, he had great output and a great catalog that is worth exploring to anybody that just does know him for maybe two songs.
Well, I have to say, I have to make a confession. I'm probably closer to that cohort of people who really only know those two songs. And I have to confess that, like, I often would see Bill Withers' greatest hits in among record collections that I thought generally were crappy, and I sort of allowed those things to become conflated, and that was wrong. And in his passing, in going back and spending a little more time with his music, like I mentioned before, I saw people just when he passed away. There was an acoustic performance of his that he did back in the day that made its way around Twitter that I watched, and it really opened my eyes. And then I didn't realize that, like, he wrote "Lean on Me,"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a songwriter too. Like,
Yeah, he was a great
not just a voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
he wasn't just some studio producer finding a voice and saying, we just got to find the right material for this guy. Like, this is a legit capital A artist who could not only write but could sing, and his songs I've always loved the songs. I've loved Horace Andy, the reggae artist, does a cover of "Ain't No Sunshine" that I've always loved, and it's haunting in the way that the original is. So I owe him more of a listen than I gave him during his time, and kind of embarrassed it took his death for me to figure all this stuff out. But it was never a lack of respect. It was that I think those two songs. I mean, I was a disc jockey at an oldie station too, and those were very popular there. I've heard those songs so many times. I think I just stopped hearing them. And it's I'm kind of embarrassed that his death. It took his death for me to start going back and really admiring how good he really was.
Yeah, and another thing, like, okay, so on the songwriting, uh, the subject of songwriting, so his debut album, which is 12 great songs, only does 2 covers on the album, and it's Everybody's Talking, written by Fred Neil famously, and then Let It Be, the Beatles, Let It Be. Does great versions of those songs, really great versions of those songs. So he could take somebody else's song and do a great take on it. But the rest of the material is his, and just definitely check that out. Anybody that needs an introduction, I think start with his debut album and maybe just work your way through the catalog. But interestingly, though, Ain't No Sunshine, when it was released as a single, was the B-side. Harlem was the A-side, which is also a great song, but Ain't No Sunshine was the B-side, and that shows you the way things go sometimes. I think, Ain't No Sunshine is obviously just a gem, and Harlem's a great song again, but Ain't No Sunshine shouldn't be the B-side to any song, really. It's just it's just outstanding.
Yep, can't argue with that. And you put a pretty, I think your playlist that you put up on our Spotify page for Left of the Dial Pod, I think is a good. That's probably where I'll start. So recommending that to everybody.
Yeah, another one that was kind of significant for me was the death of Adam Schlesinger. He died at age 52. Adam Schlesinger was in the New Jersey band Fountains of Wayne. That's what most people know him for, or maybe most people know him as being the guy that wrote the songs for That Thing You Do. Well, and actually, he's somebody that's won an Emmy too, so he is known for a lot of different things. Fountains of Wayne, though, is what I knew him from primarily, and I was a fan of Fountains of Wayne pretty much from the first album, and I think it was their third album that had the song "Stacy's Mom," which became their breakthrough hit. But anyway, I put together a list on our Spotify page, which is Left of the Dial Pod, and that has it actually. I think left Stacy's Mom off. That wasn't so much intentional, but it isn't so much what I think of when I think of Fountains of Wayne, and I did include That Thing You Do. But yeah, he interestingly, one thing I thought about this past week, and I thought about it, and then it turned out that Conan O'Brien actually posted a video about it as well. Posted a video about Adam Schlesinger after 9/11. When Conan did one of his first shows back on the air, they were the music guest, and they did the Kinks. They did a cover of the Kinks' "Better Things," which is a song that I think a great song. It's a song I actually used on our Songs That Cheer Us Up episode. And they played that song instead of playing one of their own songs because that was the most appropriate song at the moment, in their feeling, and I agree. And so I was happy to see that Conan posted a video about that too, because I thought that was a pretty cool thing at the time, and thought back about it, thinking about what we're going through now, and somebody that ended up being the victim of this horrible coronavirus that's consuming the world at the moment.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey, or that's where my permanent residence is. I'm enjoying Western North Carolina during the quarantine, but normally I am in New Jersey, and Fountains of Wayne are a big favorite there, and I know they're or they had at one time. I don't know if it's their current like best of, but I think they had a best of called Out of State Plates.
That was a rarities compilation.
Oh, I thought it was their best of. All right. Well, anyway, I bonded with that. I thought that, I mean, if you drive around this world with New Jersey license plates, you're never going to be more acutely aware of how out of state you are than when you go somewhere with New Jersey's license plates. I want to believe that is a cosmic connection I have with them, is that to be from New Jersey and to be outside of New Jersey means you're eventually going to have to talk about New Jersey. Just because so many people have such strong ideas of what New Jersey is like. And I did too. Like when I first moved to the eastern tri-state area, I lived in New York. I lived in Manhattan. Like I did all the cliched stuff. I lived in Brooklyn. Like I thought, oh my gosh, you have to be in New York City. And then only now that I'm old and exhausted did I, and want a little more space and not have to walk up 11 flights of stairs to and from work every day. I moved to New Jersey, and it does have a sort of a misunderstood culture of its own, and I know they're huge there. I happen to, I don't live like right next to Wayne, New Jersey, but one of my favorite restaurants in the world is there. Chengdu 23, what's up? So, I mean, I really being a terrible New Jerseyan, because really I'm one of the people you sort of mentioned, like, I like Stacy's mom. I liked that when that was out. I have to be honest, I always thought Fountains of Wayne just sort of is when alternative music just kind of became a blur for me. Like it was like Q101 in Chicago was a great radio station, like 92, 93, 94. They were playing stuff that was just, from all around the world. It wasn't so heavy guitar, and it wasn't so testosterone driven as sort of like the late 90s and or mid-aughts became. And I always just sort of lumped Fountains of Wayne in with that just sort of generic alternative guitar stuff. And I know I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see them as more of a power pop band. Like alternative is something that, you can sell a record with, it's a marketing term. As far as the style of the band go, they're, basically they were a power pop band.
Yeah. I mean, MTV got a lot of run out of the Stacy's Mom video. And again, we have had this discussion many times about novelty records, and we don't have to go down there right now, but it almost, I think, got treated a little bit like a novelty record, or at least like, hey, look what we can say now. Like it really was treated as just sort of boy, the times sure are changing, and I don't know. I didn't. You can't deny the hook. You can't deny it's great and everything like that. It's just a great little pop song. You are the power pop expert, though, Mr. Flick. I will never, ever. I can't think of one power pop band I'm ever going to go deeper on than you. So the fact that the playlist for Fountains of Wayne had to be made by you just means you're an educated creator of such playlists, and I could have probably figured out a pretty decent playlist, but there's no reason for me to do that when I have you.
Yeah, and I guess looking at the songs that I chose, I did stay, like, they do have some songs that are more of the funny or possibly novelty sort of bent, and I did kind of, I strayed away from including many of those. Some of them are quite good, though. I'm not judging them, but I think I was just not really wanting to show that side, because people who know Stacy's Mom, they know that side, and most people, just about everybody's heard that song at least a few times, I'm sure.
Yeah. I am not dissing them. I'm just saying that when they were in their prime, they weren't really on my radar. Mm-hmm. And the only way they got on my radar was with their big stuff, and that's really the only stuff I really heard. But I've not gone down one of these rabbit holes yet and been sorry. So I'm definitely going to go back and try to appreciate him, because clearly he was very well loved. You know what I mean? He wasn't just loved as a power pop guy. Like, he was a real songwriter.
Yeah. Well, and the That Thing You Do soundtrack is also a really good power pop record as well. So it gives you, if you like power pop, it's definitely this is somebody good to explore.
I'm with it. Is this our cue to talk about Robert Zimmerman of Hibbing, Minnesota?
Well, we should also mention there were a couple more deaths this past week.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I forgot. You're right.
So Alan Merrill, who most people probably don't know by name, you do know at least one of his songs, though. So Alan Merrill, among other things, was in a power pop band, and this is, by the way, this is somebody that was a New Yorker, born in the Bronx, lived in Manhattan, but also at one point in his career, he was in a band in London, a glam rock band that was called the Arrows, that had a little song called "I Love Rock and Roll" that caught the attention of Joan Jett, who made it a huge hit.
So I have spent my entire life. Do you know, is that the same band as Dave Allen and the Arrows from the late '60s, who did all those like motorcycle gang movie like exploitation soundtracks? Do you happen to know if they're the same?
I'm pretty certain that is not the same band. No.
Because all right, well then I have nothing to add here other than
no.
Do you happen to know how she found that song? How did Joan Jett find that song? Because it wasn't a huge hit in its original incarnation, was it?
No, it was not. And the Arrows were a band in London from 1974 to 77. And I don't know. I think the story is that she was in London, saw them live somehow, and that's how that song was on her radar. And, obviously stayed on her radar for a long time because she recorded it. Let me see. She recorded it in 1982, or it was released in 1982.
Well, I mean, you got to give Homeboy credit for writing it, but giving him credit for writing it does nothing to take away from her and the people she was working with for finding. I mean, her arrangement of that song, she was hearing something that no one else heard, clearly.
Yeah, although I don't think there's like a huge difference between her arrangement and the original. But like they just weren't a well-known band or anything like that. But Joan Jett was obviously somebody. Obviously, Joan Jett is somebody who always spend a lot of time listening to music. I mean that's
yeah.
I think that's one of her greatest talents is her taste in things.
Well, you're a fan of her covers. I'm a fan of her covers. She's great, and that album, boy, that album that's on that doesn't that album also have her cover of Crimson and Clover on it?
Oh, I don't know.
That's the same one.
That would have been the same. I don't know.
I'll have to look that up. You're right. I can't argue. Yeah, that's a loss. I hope he was not one of those guys who signed a terrible record contract. I hope he was fabulously wealthy after that.
Well, he has a pretty interesting career. Like his career was one that was definitely all over the place, and he in addition to spending time in London being in a band, he was also in a band in Japan. So, I think he led a pretty interesting life. He died at 69, also of coronavirus. And he died in Manhattan. But in between being born in the Bronx and dying later in Manhattan, he did some globetrotting.
Yeah, I'm looking at his Wikipedia. He was in the band The Left Bank for about 5 minutes, and they did Walk Away Renee, which is one of the all-time great 60s singles in my humble estimation. So
yeah,
he's got the resume.
He was not on that, but yeah, auditioned for The Left Bank, and then they broke up shortly after taking him on.
Yeah, I'm a fan all the way through. All right, well, clearly I owe this guy some ear time that I hadn't. Oh, wait. He was a Mickey Most guy. There you go. That explains a lot. Interesting. Well, all right, I definitely...
you don't want to elaborate on that?
Well, I think people would describe that as a mixed blessing. I think he was fairly exploitive, Mickey Most. But if you look at his, where did he have his hands in? Like, he was a part of some incredible records there in the UK for a long, long stretch there. I know him originally from Hot Chocolate, which is one of my all-time favorites. I have a soft spot, but he was around with Susie Quattro too. So he's been around.
Yeah, and another death to mention, the Afrofunk saxophonist Manu Dibango died of coronavirus in France at age 85. So I've included. I don't have playlists for those two, but did include songs of each of them on our in rotation list for April.
Yeah, busy week, not for great reasons, but
Right.
If you can make any good out of it, it's listening to the music that's still here.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully this isn't going to be a trend where we start each show talking about, coronavirus related deaths. It doesn't. It does look like that is a possibility, and I hope that's not the case. We should also mention John Prine is still battling this.
Yep.
And we're hoping for the best for him.
Yeah, the John Prine love online has been heavy, and I think everybody who loves music, particularly if they're around our age, knows somebody who's a John Prine fanatic who is going to. I've had 2 or 3 friends make me John Prine playlists to try to convert me, and I do love his record of duets, the one that has Iris Dement on it, and all those great female duets he does. I can't remember it. It's got "In Spite of Ourselves" on it. That is a great album, and he has had a lot of great songs. We'll be talking about him a little bit later, as it turns out.
Yeah, well, yeah, a little preview.
Shall we begin?
Sure.
Is the water warm enough?
Are you going to talk about Dylan, or?
Oh yeah, we should do a little. You know what? Let's punt on Dylan, because I know you haven't had a lot of time to listen to it, and
well,
you need a lot of time to listen to it. Let's be honest.
Me to give my candid, my candid explanation. I don't know. Like I bailed on his latest single, which. A Murder Most Foul, is that the title?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will try to get back to it. I bailed on it after 5 minutes. I don't know. But so far, so even though it's a single, it's going to require a bit more than what I had when I tried to tackle it the first time.
Well, I'm a Dylan apologist. There's nothing he's released that I don't reflexively try to defend. In this case, I think I can defend it in good faith, although I'm not saying it needs to be defended from you or by me. But
And by the way, we should definitely point out we are both big Dylan fans. Both.
Oh yeah.
I'm also a huge Dylan fan. I don't know if I'm on board for this one, but I will give it another shot.
Well, you and I are. I think around all the big bands, you and I share lots of bands in common. We have lots of even like down to the album level that we love. But the more time we do this, the more I realize like we're finding different parts of the same bands and albums to gravitate to.
Yeah.
That's no liability. In fact, I think it makes it. I think that's a reason for hope. In this case, I was listening to because I don't. The only stuff that Dylan's put out that I really don't try to defend is the most recent stuff, all the Frank Sinatra covers. I do understand why he would do that, and I do understand I think it's possible for him to do that and I understand why people don't like it, but it's not out of character for him. It's not really off-brand. I think if you listen to him and what he says, it's not really an off-brand thing. It's
No.
just not necessary.
Yeah, it's not off-brand. It's just something that I feel like he's done better early on than what he's doing now.
Well, look, Murder Most Foul, the timing, I don't know if this record gets released when it does without the calamity around us. So I do put some stock in the timing. I don't know when it was recorded. I haven't read. I do read a lot of Dylan social media, and there's speculation on when it was done and in the context and what context it was done in. I kind of don't care. I do think it's worthy of his catalog, and I think of it as an extension of these sort of long form talking blues records that he has done in one way or another throughout his entire career.
Right.
If you've ever heard that, he did when at Woody Guthrie's memorial, I think he gave he did a spoken word thing called Last Thoughts on Woody Guthrie. But it's very musical. It's unaccompanied, it's very musical in the way he uses the language. And so this form for him, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, I think is part of it, maybe a little less so than Desolation Row, I think is of this genre. Definitely Highlands from Time Out of Mind, these very long talking blues in which the sacred and the profane are just sort of mixed in the stream of consciousness, and the important details and the unimportant details are all given equal sunlight, and it's sort of for you to figure it out. That's what I love about him. It's always a puzzle. It's always panel recognition, and it's always rewarding. I'm not through that process here, but I'm far enough along in my listening to it that I know that classic Dylan ability to put what he's trying to say in there without ever saying it. It's there. This is of that caliber to me. And the stuff about the Wolfman Jack and all the songs and things that seem like sort of backhanded compliments to the Beatles, like people I think are reading too much into it, that he thinks he's better than everybody or whatever. All the little stuff I've read that people trying to diss him for, mentioning the Beatles pop stuff as if that's the only thing that represent. Like, I think people are misunderstanding what he's saying there. I think I don't want to speculate yet on what I think he's saying. Well, I do, but I'm not going to until I've had more time with it. I think I know where he's going, and of course I agree with him. Of course I think he's a genius. Of course I'm glad he did it. So I'll let you take all the time you need. You may not come back to it. I don't know if this ends up being important in his canon, but there's a chance. There's a chance, and if he doesn't make any more original music, this could be the last original song he does. That would be okay with me.
Well, you shouldn't say things like that in the current.
All right. You're right.
But yeah, I mean, mentioning something like Desolation Row, like to me, Desolation Row is great, and I didn't have any problem getting on board for that ever, and so that's, I would, I definitely see the comparison, but I also see a lot of contrast musically between a song like Desolation Row and the new one. But I'll leave it there for now because I haven't spent enough time with it. Obviously, I've just spent 5 minutes with it, so it is not enough to really assess it. And I will readily admit that one should not critique something that they've only spent 5 minutes with.
Well, I don't know. If it's a 2-minute long song, that's much fairer than if it's a 17-minute long song. But I get your point.
Perhaps. I will just say, I have not given it a day in court, so therefore I will not give my opinions on it.
All right. Well, that gives us an opportunity, because that means in one of the next couple episodes we're going to have to do a big, long new music segment, because the new music releases are starting to pile up, and I mean that in the best possible way. There have started to be some releases this year. I did throw in we've started our new April monthly playlist with some new music in it. I think in the weeks to come, we'll be talking about the new Bright Eyes, the new Pretenders. There's some new Peter, Bjorn, and John that I think is pretty good. Maybe not going to win any awards for originality, but I don't know that that's true of any of their stuff. There's new No Age, new Magnetic Field, new Andrew Bird. We've talked about, and then my favorite band from Britain right now, which is a band called Pigs, 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 Pigs. They have new stuff out, a whole album actually. I've never heard a bad note from them. Oh yeah.
They really need a nickname. They need a nickname.
They're just going to be, the Seven Pigs is what I'll call them. The new Seven Pigs doesn't let me down. And I mean, again, nothing they've done to let me down. So we've got a lot of new music to talk about coming up soon. We'll put Dylan on the front burner for that.
All right.
It's about that time then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I only keep track of who goes first on the times when it's advantageous to go first. I don't know if it's advantageous to go first, so I'm not going to fight you for it.
Okay. Meaning I go first, or meaning you go first?
Yes, meaning you can go first.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what are we doing? We are talking about 80s cover songs, which are cover songs of songs that were popular in the 80s. However popular, that's up for debate. These aren't all chart topping songs that are being covered here. And sometimes they might have even been done as covers in the 80s. That's a possibility.
I got one.
What?
I have one of those. I got an 80s cover from the 80s. I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I might have one of those, but then again, it might end up being a bonus track. So anyway, yeah, these were all songs of varying popularity within the 80s that were covered by bands, obviously later on. And I'm going to start my list with a big Kim Wilde song that is, I think, kind of definitive of the 80s in a way. Kids in America, and it's the version done by the Muffs that was originally contributed to the Clueless soundtrack in the 90s, and also available on an Odds and Ends compilation put out by the Muffs later on.
Well, Mr. Flick, I love the original song, and when I was a child when that came out, I think I was 12 or 13 when that came out, I didn't understand American geography as well as I do now. And the one thing I must say, the only criticism that I can offer, and I don't, it's not mandatory that I do, but I do want to discuss this, is the lyric about New York to East California. Is that right? Am I remembering that lyric correctly?
New York to East California.
Okay. Have you been to East California?
No. Well,
yeah,
Northeast California, I guess.
I love East California because of its remoteness and the lack of human contact you have there. Least of all with kids being kids. So I think the biggest city in eastern East California would be like Needles. I don't know if you've ever been to Needles. It's in the Mojave Desert. Like, I don't know if kids in America, like, it just doesn't, singing about East California sort of, and then trying to tie that to youthful enthusiasm lyrically doesn't work with East California. I don't understand. It's one of those lyrical clunkers that I can't get over. What is it? Why East California? Why not just say Southern or something? I don't get it.
Maybe a little bit like Born and Raised in South Detroit.
Or The Night Chicago Died, they sing about on the east side of Chicago. Like, are there really no continuity managers at these record companies? Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, the east side of Chicago is Lake Michigan.
Yeah, or it's the Michigan Dunes. I mean, come on. Anyway, I don't know why. I don't know. Look, I love the song. I love the choice, but you picked one that it's always stuck in my mind as cringy and a clunker, and I want to resolve those feelings because I want to love it with my whole heart, and I just don't know that I can.
The lyrics aside, the song rocks. I mean, the
bass too. The bass, hot.
Yeah,
just hot.
Yeah, the lyrics might be problematic, but the song definitely rocks.
The use of the word problematic there, we're using it in a different sense. That's all I'll say. I can't argue with either of your choices there. The Muffs version or the source material. Both worthy. Not that it requires my affirmation.
I think it's possible. So I remember this compilation, but it's been a long time since I read the liner notes to it. But Kim Shattuck had comments on all the songs on the compilation, and she might have made a comment on that because I remember her commenting on some of the lyrics of the covers that they did, and yeah, I don't remember specifically one about that, but I think it's quite possible that she mentioned that lyric.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a great song. I can't imagine making an 80s playlist that doesn't have it on it, and the Muffs were great. So let's I think you've kicked off strong.
I think so too.
It's see, this crisis is bringing us together. All right, I'm going to pick one that I wish I could access. I don't know how to access my own listening stats on Spotify, but I think I could bring receipts to show that from my first play of this until today, like this has been in my ears regularly for as long as it's been out, which I don't even know. It's at least half a decade. Let me look up. Yeah, 10 years old. This is 10 years old now. And I have to talk about it. It's the band The Paper Cuts, who I really like, did a cover of Don Henley's Boys of Summer on an album called Sing Me to Sleep, which is like indie lullaby. So indie bands doing covers is lullabies for alternative children, I guess. I don't know. The album itself isn't great, but the Paper Cuts version of Boys of Summer, I swear to God, I don't like Don Henley very much, but you have to give it to him on that song. That song is one of the greatest songs of that decade. It's one of the better rock and roll songs I think that's ever been written. Like, I've never lived his life. I don't really know what half his songs are about, but you don't have to be a rock star to know what that song's about, and it's impossible not to feel a little. It's impossible not to have some sympathies with the narrator there. It's got great, beautiful image, but most importantly, it has that incredible guitar sound and an incredible guitar riff, which I believe is a Tom Petty discard. Is it the guitarist for Tom Petty is not Ben Tench?
Mike Campbell.
Mike Campbell.
And Montana is the keyboardist.
Yeah. So Mike Campbell has this thing, and he has this riff, and he this little idea for a song. He offers it to Tom Petty. Tom Petty doesn't really have much use for it. He offers it to Don Henley, and Don Henley comes up with just a near masterpiece. What makes the Paper Cuts version so awesome is almost none of the musical things that make the Don Henley version so potent are in it. Yeah, I don't even think there's a good. I'm trying to think if that riff is even played once in the Paper Cuts version. It's played to totally different arrangement. And it just doesn't lean on the thing that I think is like the song's calling card, other than the lyrics and the video, is just that sounding guitar, just that amazing sound, that amazing riff. And the Paper Cuts find a way to produce a brilliant cover without that sound or that riff. So I have to go first with it. I listen to it constantly and I marvel at it because he found a way to take this sort of classic rock. I think that song tried to be classic rock when it was new. Like it was deliberately a resume for all-time classic, and it succeeds on that level. To come at it from this indie point of view and use the language of indie rock and still find an incredible experience. I like the Paper Cuts in general, so I'm biased. This version, though, for me is probably my favorite 80s cover. It's certainly the one I listen to most. At least I think I do. So, Paper Cuts, Boys of Summer.
Boy, between this and the Benality draft, I think we've said more positive things about Don Henley than either of us would have ever imagined.
Yeah, but remember, we're trying to be positive. If we hadn't tried to be positive, that would have gone very differently.
Yeah, well, and I will say I kind of agree. I don't. I kind of agree on Boys of Summer being a strong song. I don't know that I'd say masterpiece, but strong. And yeah, Anyway, my number 2 song. So this isn't going to be a list. I don't want to deceive anybody and think this is going to be a list of all like big soundtrack hits from the 80s, but it is one of those things that it's hard not to associate with the 80s. And with that in mind, my second song is Yo La Tengo's version of Jackson Brown's Somebody's Baby, featured obviously prominently. Well, not obviously if you've never seen the movie, but featured prominently in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I really like the Yo La Tengo version of it a lot, and that's my number 2 song.
Yep, Yo La Tengo, covers masters. Just masters of the cover genre. I respect the choice. I'll go up next. I'm going to take the song Run, Run Away, which was released by the band Slade. And it had been recorded as like it sounds like some sort of Celtic folk music, almost like if you were trying to like do a send up of the Pogues, maybe a little bit. I don't know. But I looked them up. They're from Canada. They're from Newfoundland. So I don't know. It's got a little of that Canadian folk culture to it. Like the McGarricles probably would have known how to dance properly to it. Their cover of Run, Run Away, I love. It's one of my favorites. And the only reason I found it is I was looking for the original Slade version. And the only version of Run, Run Away of any kind, no karaoke version, no other covers that I could find, the only response back that is Slade's Run, Run Away was this song by Great Big Sea. I think they're from Newfoundland. Run, Run Away. I put it on the playlist. Judge for yourself. It doesn't outdo the original because nothing does. But in this case, pretty damn close. And if there was ever a need for a Celtic arrangement of a Slade song, I think they satiated the market for eternity. I'll leave it there.
So that's a late addition to your list because I don't remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember though, we decided we were going to go up to 15 this week. My original list was a 12 with 4 bonus tracks, and as we got to chatting, that one came up. So yes, late ad, but strong, solid, and I think you'll see that when you give it a spin.
Okay. All right, my next song, and let me see. So, not a song that I remember being featured on any soundtrack in the 80s. And you have to go back all the way to 1980 for the original song by the Jam, Going Underground, which I like a lot. And Buffalo Tom covered it. I'm not sure what the year would have been, but I first remember it being on a Jam tribute album. And Buffalo Tom just totally went 180 with it. Just a completely different arrangement than the original. And I love the original and love the cover maybe equally.
Wow.
Both versions of this song, which are drastically different, but it is the same song, so it can't be that much different, I guess. But both versions of this song I couldn't love more. It's a great song in either case.
Excellent pick, sir. Buffalo Tom is underrated, and the Jam, you can't call the Jam underrated because people in England know how great they were. They're underrated here. I think the Jam are too smart for our radio, but they deserve the Radio Hero Award because, I mean, who was writing better pop songs in that era than Paul Weller? Like, who was really writing songs that were going to stick harder than that? Not many people, if any.
Yeah, in a perfect world, they would have been radio hits on both sides of the pond, and would still be on classic rock radio now. But we do not live in a perfect world.
I lived in Chicago. I was born in 1970. I moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, right after finishing grade school in June of 1984. I remember as clear as day seeing the video for Town Called Malice. It was on Chicago had a local video show that was on in the afternoons, or it was like a really interesting. It was called MV3. It had a lot of British videos because that's who was making all the videos. I can remember seeing the Town Called Malice video and just I was in awe I ran to the TV with a pen and paper to write down the name of what it was. And that's a short song. Tried to find a pen and paper and make it back in front of the TV before it ends after you've been standing there with your mouth open. Like that was a real feat. That was a life changer for me. And nothing on their catalog other than their late stuff really sounds like that. But boy, for a band that was only around 5 years, I can't think of a band that gives you more bang for the buck going through their catalog than they do. I love the Jam. Sorry, I talked about your pick too much. Sorry. I'd always do that, and I apologize. I will pay back by going quickly through my number 3. El Perro del Mar had put out an album like a year ago. I love her. She's backward looking in the ways I don't like, and she's part of that. For some reason, all that music from Sweden in the mid-aughts was like all those bands, Jens Lekman and her, they always do backward looking stuff. I don't know what it is, but I really love El Perro del Mar. I understand why she's not a super huge hit because she's a little over the top and plays to character a little bit, I think. But it's just, I love her voice. I got to see her at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, one of my favorite shows, because it was really just, she was like sitting right in front of everybody. Like she really was fearless with it, and her heart's in it, and she believes it. And so when she puts out covers, I always go for them. Her cover of Prince's "I Would Die for You," totally different arrangement, but give it a try. If nobody likes it, I'll understand. Maybe she's an acquired taste, and covering Prince is a tough thing to do because he's so good, but give it a try. El Perro del Mar, "I Would Die for You."
Okay. All right. My next one is a cover by Pavement of Echo and the Bunnymen's "The Killing Moon." Featured in why am I blanking on? It was featured in a movie, but in the 90s, not the 80s. Why am I blanking on the movie now?
I wish I could help you, sir.
Well, anyway, I was just saying that as an aside because this is going back to another song that was featured in a soundtrack. Donnie Darko was the movie I was thinking of, but apparently there was a director's cut where they took that out, or I don't know. I don't remember anymore. But anyway, "The Killing Moon" by Pavement and originally by Echo Bunnymen is my number 4 song on my list.
I'm jealous of the pick. I wish it was mine. I didn't get to it before you. I think I was, when we started talking about this topic, wasn't it one of the first ones you picked?
Yeah, because I knew you'd want it, and I knew I wanted
punk ass. You know why that hurt? The greatest regret. We should maybe talk about this some other time. But my greatest regret to the shows that I didn't go to was a double bill of Echo and the Bunnymen with Screaming Blue Messiahs opening up at Hancher in like 1987, and I had to work that night at the Hardee's in Marion, Iowa. So I made mushroom and Swiss and big deluxe sandwiches instead of seeing. Both of those bands had great albums out at that time, and it was like the only time actual cool alternative bands came to Iowa, and I didn't even fucking go. Oh God, I love Echo and the Bunnymen. God, they were good. Even the Pavement cover's good. All right, good choice, punk ass. Taking my pick. All right, up next, very quickly here. I don't know why this came out. I don't know why he did it. Hugh Cornwell was a singer, one of the co-leaders of, co-authors of the songs and co-singer in the Stranglers for the first 15 years of their career, and then he quit and he's had a solo career, which I have followed. Not many have. I think Hugh Cornwell's one of the coolest motherfuckers I've ever seen. I don't have a lot of heroes, and he's an anti-hero. I don't have a lot of anti-heroes either. He's one of my anti-heroes. Well, one of my favorite Strangler songs is Golden Brown. Very strange little song. But one of the best songs about heroin I think that's ever been written. And he decided to come back and do a cover of his own he recorded it with the Stranglers, and then a couple of years back he made a mariachi version of Golden Brown, and it's not a novelty. I listen to this almost as much as the original. For some reason, the mariachi version of Golden Brown by Hugh Cornwell is just it's irresistible. Please give it a try. You don't have to like heroin, or you don't have to like the Stranglers. Just give it a try. Golden Brown by Hugh Cornwell.
All right, my number 5 song. I do not believe this was ever in a movie soundtrack, but who knows? It might have been. But So Graham Coxon, who was in Blur, he the lead guitarist of Blur. As a solo artist, covered "That's When I Reached for My Revolver," originally done by Mission of Burma. If you don't know Mission of Burma, you should definitely get to know them. And Graham Coxon's version of "That's When I Reach for My Revolver," which is pretty faithful to the original, but still great. I don't necessarily like. Normally, I like covers that don't try to just duplicate the original. Here is a case where that basically is what Coxon was doing, but still effective nonetheless.
Wow, you are on En Fuego this week, sir. You're on fire. Fantastic. It does remind me, I didn't go see R.E.M. on the Orange Tour at Carver Hawkeye in Iowa City, and they kicked that set off with a cover of Academy Fight Song. And of course, no one would believe me when I'd be like, oh my God, how did I miss that show? Finally, R.E.M. released a Orange Era tour. Apparently, they must have played it in a lot of their shows because it's on that R.E.M. album. But I almost went for that one, but when I almost went for Moby's version of Reach for My Revolver, but you made it unnecessary. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Did you go see R.E.M. at that show?
No, I didn't actually see R.E.M. until I saw them with Springsteen at the Vote for Change show in St. Paul.
It hurts that I never got to see R.E.M. and I had a chance to see them on that tour. Wow. Anyway, up next for me, I promise I did not just go to Spotify and type in 80s covers playlists. However, if you spend enough time on Spotify, you're eventually going to see that there are hundreds and hundreds of 80s tribute albums. It's kind of a cottage industry, and I've tried to keep my picks as far away from that stuff as I could, but there's just too many of those albums for me to resist forever. So my first, I guess the Boys of Summer Paper Cuts is from a schmaltzy recent era overdone tribute album, but there was a physical release version, an actual CD made of the Sing Me to Sleep, I think. I don't think that's true of this album, which is called Guilt by Association 2. These are bands from, I believe, the Portland, Oregon area doing covers. I think it's a charity of some sort. I don't really know or like the band. The Cassettes won't listen all that much. I really don't know their career very much, but their version of In Excess's Need You Tonight is shit hot 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and deserves an ear. So I put it on the playlist. Give it a try. Cassettes won't listen. Need You Tonight.
Okay. All right. My next one. So Juliana Hatfield has recently put out cover albums of The Police, and I forget who else she did a cover album on.
Olivia Newton-John.
So really good all the way around, and really like some of the songs that I liked the most on it were Police songs that were actually from the 70s. So perhaps when we do a playlist along those lines, I'll dip back into this album. But I also do like her version of Every Breath You Take, and that is my number 6 song.
Yeah, I'm gonna nominate, and I don't think you'd argue with me. She belongs in the cover masters genre. I can't think of a bad cover from her. I think other people's songs are in great hands when she does them, and those last 2 cover albums are great.
Yeah, she's the cover master.
One of the dudes who this is terrible. Sorry. So one of the dudes who shows up on all these Spotify playlists, I remember one time trying to figure out who he was, and I've forgotten, and I've just decided on principle I am not looking it up. But this guy's name is Mike Viola. He was like a guitarist in some band or singer in some band that you've heard of. I don't know which one. I can't remember which one.
He was. So he was in the Candy Butchers.
There you go.
And going back to That Thing You Do, he also was. He sang lead on That Thing You Do.
Oh, okay. Well, he appears on lots of these like online tribute albums, and he's great on almost all of them. He's on a McCartney one, a Smiths one. He's on 2 different versions of the Guilt by Association anthology, and then he's on a British Invasion compilation. And I just figured out over time, because I love that Smiths one. I bought that one when that came out, but I really have found my way around these compilations, and I keep bumping into his shit. And I'm gonna rep for him here. I don't really know a lot about the Candy Butchers. Wasn't a huge fan. His version of Everybody Wants to Rule the World is awesome. And I've gone and there's lots of other covers of it, and I don't know which one came first. I don't know if his arrangement is the one that sort of kicked off this singer-songwritery acoustic one, but I go back and listen to this thing all the time. I really, really like his version of it and his arrangement of it. It's sort of chintz to go just do acoustic. That doesn't take a lot of original thinking, but I really think he makes it sound fresh too. So Mike Viola, whoever you are, wherever you are, I love Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and I like your stuff in general on Spotify, even though I don't like the genre. But you're a player and you got to eat too. I get it.
Yeah, Mike Viola, another great power popper. Anyway, another. So there are a lot of great versions of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's a heavily covered song.
Yep.
Another couple of really good ones that come to mind. Patti Smith did a version of it on her covers album, which I always forget the name of, but well, let me see. It should be right in front of me, I guess. So that was called. It was called 12. That's why I can't remember. It's just a number. Anyway, that was a good one. Another one that I like a lot. So the Onion AV Club has a series that is called AV Undercover. And I think the first edition of that, Ted Leo and the Pharmacist did covered Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I think that is the best cover of it that I've ever heard, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
What year did Tub Thumping come out? That's a 90s song, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
98. I don't know. Just to guess.
The AV Club, they Might Be Giants cover of Tub Thumping.
Oh, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Damn. Maybe we'll do a 90s cover show. I claim that one. Anyway, no argument here on your choice.
All right. And okay, so my number 7.
Yes.
Frente had a like an alternate hit at any rate. It might have been a top 40 hit. I don't really know. I don't follow the charts so much. But Frente, who were from Australia, maybe, right? Anyway, they covered Bizarre Love Triangle on their album in 1984 or 1994, I mean, and very different take on Bizarre Love Triangle. Just totally acoustic. Just it's a sad song in any case, but makes it even somehow sadder on when it's done with an acoustic guitar and not really anything else but an acoustic guitar and a voice. And that's my number 7 song.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just go right in here and say I picked Orgy's cover of Blue Monday, and I was gonna put the Frente on, but I'm like, I don't need to, and I thought there was a chance you'd pick the Frente one, so I picked Orgy. I'm gonna try to rep that the Orgy one is at least the artistic peer of the Frente one. Like Frente did something with the arrangement that makes it uniquely their own and makes a good case for their vision. Orgy did the same thing with this. That's like I don't know what that genre is even called. Like if it's nu metal or not. I don't know if Orgy was nu metal, but there was that like Static X and all those bands of that era. I don't know what that genre is called. I don't know if I would ever know who Orgy was because I just don't usually groove on that shit. But damn, their cover of Blue Monday is pretty fucking good. And it almost redeems the genre. So I'm proud of us that we each found a way to get a New Order cover in here because I don't think New Order is loved as much as they should be. I actually, if I could throw a hot take in here, I think people are overdoing it on Joy Division a little bit. And I love Joy Division. but I think they're doing it at the expense of New Order. And damn it, I'm glad we came correct here and each got New Order in before we got Joy Division. I'm proud of us.
Yeah. And another thing about the Frente version of Bizarre Love Triangle, this they were the first with I think the idea to take a New Order song and do an acoustic arrangement of it.
Yeah.
But in the wake of them doing that, it's been something a lot of other bands have done.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about that because if we do this for the 90s, I might be going there. Okay? Can I just leave it there, please?
Okay.
Great. Your turn.
All right. So my number 8, I'm kind of sticking with this acoustic take on a song from the 80s that was definitely not an acoustic guitar song. Sturgill Simpson, before his more well-known version of Nirvana's In Bloom, did what I think is actually a better cover version in his catalog when he did The Promise, which now I'm blanking on the name of the band that originated that song.
When in Rome?
When in Rome. Thank you. So his take on The Promise by When in Rome, it was a song that I thought was a pretty good song to begin with, and then when I heard this version of the song, I was like, man, that's a great song. And yeah, it really was the thing that took me from thinking that that's a pretty good song to that's a great song. So kudos to Sturgill Simpson for that one. Nothing wrong with his version of In Bloom, but I think that this is really the one where he hit pay dirt with that with his interpretation on somebody else's work.
Yeah, I'm becoming a bigger Sturgill Simpson fan with each passing day. I've never heard anything bad. I'll put it that way.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
All right. I'm going back to Bob Dylan territory here. I love Elvis Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins. Elvis Perkins is a little bit prickly, I think, probably. He's a little, I don't know. I understand why he's maybe not a household name musically, but I think he writes beautifully. I think he sings beautifully, and his musical IQ is just through the roof. And one of the things I would point to as proof is God bless these people who make endless tribute albums. Somebody decided to make a tribute to Bob Dylan's 80s oeuvre, the Dylan in the 80s catalog. I think is a way to try to go sifting through the haystack for the needle. The compilation itself is pretty good, and it made me go back and find a few songs that I passed over, but none more significantly than Congratulations, which Bob Dylan had on the first Traveling Wilburys album. And I don't mind the Traveling Wilburys version of it, but it just pales in comparison to Elvis Perkins. And I have to say, this is so over the top to even suggest, considering how much talent there is in the Traveling Wilburys. But I think Elvis Perkins did the song better than George Harrison, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Lynn. So it's on the playlist. Congratulations by Elvis Perkins. If you don't listen to him, start at the beginning of his career and just keep going. He's great.
So I wasn't aware of this tribute album until you put it on your list. It's one that I'll probably have to check out because there are some good bands on here. Built to Spill is a band I like a lot, and I'll have to check this out. And it's also I think the same as what you're alluding to is that these are songs that I don't, even as Bob Dylan fans, I don't know that we've spent a lot of time with the originals,
right?
Or comparatively anyway. So I'm interested to see if there's any of these cover versions that will change my take on it. Because one thing that didn't, so when Dylan came out with Chronicles chapter 1, right? The way that he was talking about the stuff that he was doing in the 80s made me think, boy, was this stuff better than I thought it was when I first heard it? And
yeah.
I still don't know, but maybe some of these versions of it will make me see whether or not it was everything that Dylan was making it out to be in
Well,
Chronicles.
I have to correct it. There's two versions of this album, and I didn't link to the deluxe version. The deluxe version is twice as long and has a ton of great stuff on it that the other one doesn't. It's got Widespread Panic on it, Low Anthem, Blitzen Trapper, Elvis Perkins, my boy, Deer Tick, Craig Finn, Built to Spilt, tons and tons of stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna link to the deluxe version so you don't miss all. This is almost like a full album's extra worth of stuff. So please give it a try. I'll be happy if you find something you like.
Yeah, and that's just called Dylan in the 80s, or is there?
It's called A Tribute to Bob Dylan in the 80s, Volume 1.
Okay.
The deluxe version.
All right. Yeah, they'll be digging deep for Volume 2 of that. Assuming
I have come to be a fan of 80s Dylan, in spite of the fact that it is easily his weakest decade. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's not that it's totally void of anything good, but just a lot less of it in other decades.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm tempted. I have a Wilburys song on my list that's coming up, and I'm tempted to do it now, but I want to keep sort of a certain feel, certain. I like to maintain a certain mood, and then change it and not have mood swings so much in my my list. So I'm going to save it for later, just for continuity's sake. So staying with the mood that I'm in, my next song is another cover version of. Well, in this case, I would say you listen to the original, and it's not bad, but the cover version is absolutely stellar, and that is Beck's version of the Corgis' "Everybody's Got to Learn Sometimes," which was a song on the soundtrack "Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind," which is an absolutely great film, and a really good soundtrack as well. John Bryan did the score of that movie, and it's really one of his best scores as well. But Beck's version of "Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime" might actually be a top 5 or 10 Beck song as well. It's really one of his best things, I think.
Wow, you and I are both very, very convinced Beck fans. And that's a bold statement, as I understand your Beck love.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it is great. It's just, it's exceptional.
He is a cover master. I would say Beck is, and I'm very frustrated. It's very frustrating to be a Beck fan because there is so much music he's released that is fantastic, great, like career high level stuff that's either was never easy to find, or has always been impossible to find. It's never reissued. It's never really compiled. I think the Odelay deluxe version is as close as we've gotten to like collecting some of the stuff, but I think Beck's output outside of his albums is almost as big as his albums, and I don't think there's a dip in quality at all, including his covers. He's just this is one of his. He does. He did the whole Skip Spence Orr album. I think some of the stuff he did on that was great, just great, like as good as anything in his career. So I agree with you. You got to be able to lump some of his covers in with his other stuff when you're ranking him, because he's a master of it. Like, it's just literally a master. All right, well, I'm a homer for Beck. What can I say?
Yeah, and by the way, with that in mind, Beck's version of Big Star's Kangaroo also great. If you can find it's one I think he only did live, but it's worth finding.
Yeah, that's good stuff. It took me a lot not to pick Jeff Buckley's cover of one of those Smiths covers he did for this playlist. If we do a part 2, Jeff Buckley reminds me of that. Those covers he did was that same vein. It was great. All right, I'll go here next. I have a little theme developing. That's normally your department. I'm gonna do a my 3 songs with my next 3 picks. I'm gonna start with I believe they are from Champaign, Illinois. The Poster Children, who were a little bit more when I was doing college radio, like the early 90s. That's when I think of their heyday being like late 80s, early 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And I love that song, If You See K, one of my favorites from that era. They do a cover of Heaven 17's We Don't Need This Fascist Group Thing on a covers EP they did in like the early 2000s. I like Heaven 17. I think they were super smart and made stuff that's really enduring the test of time. But the Poster Children version, this is just a really organic, like played by hand. They're playing it like they mean it. Like there's no real machine feeling to it. This is straight as organic and four on the floor as you can get. And I think they find a mean edge to the song that the other version doesn't have, even though it's very on the nose. It's so hard to explain this song. Like why you'd have to write a song saying, hey, let's keep the Nazi shit off the dance floor. But late 70s, early 80s, I'm so, Heaven 17 getting up and putting it on the line. And I remember like the Clash were always big in the rock against racism movement and stuff. The history is making this song unfortunately useful again. The fact that the Poster Children recorded it in 2004, it probably never wasn't useful. But especially for these times, I think it plays great, sounds great. Huge sing-along chorus, air drumming opportunities all day. Poster Children's We Don't Need This Fascist Group Thing.
Okay, did you want to just go through 3 songs in a row?
I can.
Okay.
And then you can have 3. All right. So here's I'll try to make it quick. I think the only way to follow We Don't Need This Fascist Groove Thing is the cover of One Vision, originally Queen's song One Vision, as recorded by Yugoslavia's own Laibach. Now they did take some arrangement liberties with Queen's original Vision. Queen, the first time I believe most people heard the song One Vision was as soundtrack to the movie Iron Eagle. You may not have seen the movie Iron Eagle because the movie Iron Eagle was dog shit, and it was a cash-in on the popularity of Top Gun. Top Gun is also dog shit, and the fact that there's another Top Gun, it's not possible that won't also be dog shit. So like when I'm around the millennials and I'm around the kids and they have nostalgia for the 80s, it's because they weren't there and they didn't have to listen to Queen's One Vision, or they didn't have to listen to Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone. Now, they listen to it now ironically, but they're usually at a bar completely wasted and their pain is numbed for them. Imagine having to listen to it hundreds of times a day when you're too young to drink. Like it's absolutely nightmarish, horrible music, and I think Queen's One Vision is their attempt at capturing the Kenny Loggins magic. So when a band from behind the Iron Curtain in 1987 on beautiful little Wax Trax records in Chicago, and that's how I know this even existed, is when I was a kid, we would drive in from Cedar Rapids to Chicago. I would go to Wax Trax to buy the music it's the only place that ever had it. And this was on one day. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I mean, Laibach got dismissed by Pitchfork for being kind of a novelty band. Nothing could be further from the truth. I will spare you all the detail here, but they basically make a military march out of Queen's One Vision, and they sing it in German. I will leave this topic here just by saying it sounds great in German. I think when you hear the lyrics of that song sung back to you in German, you'll understand why I consider One Vision to sort of not only be a low point in Queen's career, but kind of a cultural low point in general. It's like Kenny Loggins a Jace. For Queen to be Kenny Loggins a Jace, Mighty Queen, it just shows how bad things got in the mid-'80s. It's a low point for them, but Laibach's cover is one of my favorite things on planet Earth. My third in the I don't know, the trio here is there was a benefit album called Generations One, a punk look at human rights. It came out in 1996. It has Eleanor Roosevelt on the cover, and it was really a lot about how Elizabeth Roosevelt's spirit was so ahead of the culture and in good ways. And this weird little album, this little punk benefit album has is incredible lineup on it. It's got the Bad Brains. It's got Green Day. Exene Cervenka's on it. Me First and the Gimme Gimmes are on it. There's a ton of bands everybody would know. I bought it because what I consider the last great Joe Strummer song is on it. Only he did it under the name Electric Doghouse. It's him with rat scabies. It was basically his like earthquake weather band, kind of, I think. But the song Generations is what I bought it for. It's really, I dare I say, it's probably the only Joe Strummer solo song that would have been also a great Clash song. I think it's that good. But if you go down through the album, one of the covers on here, there's quite a few covers on them. Nervous Breakdown's on here. Coming to America's on here. Jilted John is on here. The Vandals covering Jilted John, which is the song that made Martin Hannett famous. Go listen to the single version of Jilted John. I'll put it in our playlist. It's fucking amazing. The Vandals covered on this Generations album. Also on this album is the band The Assorted Jelly Beans covering the Vandals' Legend of Pat Brown. I don't really love the SoCal skate punk music scene. Like I was never, when those records were out, I wasn't, I didn't have KROQ in Cedar Rapids, so I didn't listen to any of that stuff. I had to find a lot of this stuff later. I love the original version of Legend of Pat Brown by the Vandals, and I went and I read up on it. And apparently, it actually happened. There was a punk bar in Orange County that shared a parking lot with like a country western bar. And apparently the rednecks in the country western bar would get all drunk and whooped up and decide that they were going to go over and beat some hippie ass by going in the punk bar and starting fights. And apparently this was a long-standing thing. And there really was a person named Pat Brown who went insane during one of these fights. Or I didn't read enough to know definitively the difference between the song and the news clippings that I saw of it. But knowing the history of the song, I just feel like it fits that's the sort of fascist, the fascism theme of this is the stuff you can't. If I tried to explain it to the millennials in my office, like they look at me like they don't believe me that there would have been a time where there would have been a country western bar across the parking lot for a punk bar, and the rednecks would have gone over with pool cues trying to beat the crap out of punks just because they were in there listening to punk music. Like that occurred during my lifetime. That occurred well within living memory. I've never heard it documented better than on this. So, Assorted Jelly Beans cover of Legend of Pat Brown. You should go back and find the Vandals version if you're not familiar with it. Again, I'm not a collector of old punk 7 inches from SoCal. Wasn't really my scene, but fuck if I don't love Legend of Pat Brown by the Vandals. And then the Assorted Jelly Beans cover is just fucking great. It helped me love that genre of music more than I ever would have. So Assorted Jelly Beans, Legend of Pat Brown. We Don't Need This Fascist Groove thing by the Poster Children, and then Liebach's cover of One Vision, Geburt einer Nation.
Okay.
That's heavy. 3 in a row though, so you're good for 3.
Okay. All right. So my 3, starting with my number 10 song, Bruce Springsteen track that is, pretty much a favorite of mine that isn't one of his well-known songs, but is from a well-known album, the Born in the USA album. Vampire Weekend did some really good covers as B-sides going back to their early singles from their self-titled debut. And one of them was their version of I'm Going Down by Bruce Springsteen, which is a Springsteen song I totally love. Not that well known. I think maybe at one time it was a radio song, but not a very successful one. The aforementioned Traveling Wilburys contribution to my playlist, the Jenny Lewis version of Handle with Care, which also featured Bright Eyes and M. Ward and Jim James and am I forgetting somebody in there?
The Monsters of Folk.
Yeah, the Monsters of Folk. Am I forgetting any of the monster?
I don't think so.
Is there a monster that I'm leaving out of that?
Yim Yams.
Sure. Yeah, Jim James.
I'm sorry. He does it to all of us. I did it to you. I don't see where it's so bad.
Anyway, Yim Yames, and then my number 12 song, an SST B side, or was it actually the A side to the single?
No, I can tell you this because I bought it.
It was the A side.
Yeah, and it came with an etched B side. The B side had an etching, a J Mascis etching,
Right.
and some fucking douche. I would love to know who it was. It had to be one of my sister's boyfriends. Somebody plundered my record collection at some point because I lived at my parents' house, and at least they had the taste to steal that. So I'm very jealous of this pick. I only know it because I had it at one point. I don't.
I haven't even said what it is yet.
Oh, I already knew.
It's Dinosaur Jr.'s version of The Cure's "Just Like Heaven."
Oh, it is just like heaven, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was I had it as a CD single. Or I have it. I still have that somewhere.
I'm really jealous of this pick. This is, if I was to be honest, like, what is the greatest miss? It's not the Pavement, because I actually don't think the Pavement cover is the equal of the original to the degree that it is, that this cover is the equal of the original. And the original is fucking great.
Yeah, somebody needs to cover some Dinosaur Jr. songs the way that Dinosaur Jr. covers other songs, and then we'd have equilibrium. Because J Mascis does some great covers, but not many people are doing great covers of J Mascis songs.
That's true. They're hard, though. You have to be able to play them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Johnny Cash's cover of I'm on Fire isn't on Spotify anymore, but if you can find that one, that's great too. Bruce does get some. Maybe we should do. We'll figure it out. That was a pretty heavy triumvirate for you. Those were our triad for you. That was 3 good ones there, son. All right, I'm going to go quick here. We've talked about her before, so I'm going to go real short with this one. Petra Haden, I love her cover of the Who Sell Out. I think it's great. And she's done some other covers in that style. Definitely look up her cover of... I've already used it, and I've already talked about it before, of the Journey song, the Don't Stop Believin'. That's one of the best things I've ever heard, is Petra Haden's. But I've talked about it before, so I grabbed another one of her 80s covers. She does a cover of Rockwell's Somebody's Watching Me. It has to be heard to be believed. It's on the playlist. Petra Haden's Somebody's Watching Me.
Okay, so for my number 13 song, this was a song I hadn't thought about in a long time. That song being "Freedom" by Wham! And I think this was also featured on the compilation album that's on your list. But it's the band is called the Davenports. They did a cover of "Freedom" again by Wham! And it's really good, and it made me kind of think back to that song, which again I hadn't thought about in a long time. But that was a pretty good tune.
You're not dissing George Michael in this house, are you?
I'm not. I'm saying
right. All right, carry on. Just wanted to check.
Just a tune I hadn't thought about in a long time. I mean, at this point, you get inundated with Careless Whisper so much that it's, not the biggest Careless Whisper fan myself, but I do like this song, and I hadn't thought about it in a long time, and happy to put the Davenport's version of it on my playlist.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was a real one. George Michael was a real one, and I think I wish I appreciated him more in his time. Although I do love "I'm Your Man," I've always loved that.
He did have some good songs and well featured a movie I think you would like. You don't like many movies, and I understand this, and it's tough to make recommendations to you. But do you know Key and Peele at all?
Oh yeah,
Jordan Peele Jordan Peele and Keegan Michael Key. So their movie Keanu. Do you know that one?
No.
It's good, and you should see it. And George Michael plays. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but George Michael plays a very important part to the movie. Not that he's in it, or was in it, but anyway, he's featured prominently.
I'm a fan. Up next, I have a Tom Jones cover. He did a lot of covers. I think he did primarily covers, but his cover of the Talking Heads "Burning Down the House." I saw Tom Jones at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas in the '90s, I think. It was a great show. So I went there ironically, and I walked out a completely unironic fan of Tom Jones. And his version of Burning Down the House is backed by the Cardigans, who I think are criminally underrated. And I don't I don't think Tom Jones is faking the funk ever. I think you're getting 100%. That's who he is. I think he's great. And this cover of Burning Down the House is fucking great. So there you go. Tom Jones and the Cardigans, Burning Down the House.
I'm 100% with you on the Cardigans. When it comes to Tom Jones, I'm not quite sure. I want to I want to buy into your experience.
Yeah.
I don't know though. He's just never. If he, it's good that he broke through to you. He's never broken through to me. I don't get what it is. I've never understood what it is.
It's the chest hair. I have to recommend, and I'm putting it in our playlist, the comedian John Mulvaney's got a cut from one of his albums called The Salt and Pepper Diner. I'm sorry, Mulaney. Sorry, I'm old. What am I going to do? John Mulaney. I'm looking right at him, and I mispronounced his name. The Salt and Pepper Diner from one. I can't remember even what year that album came out. It's the best Tom Jones story in the world. So yeah, I'll put that on our playlist.
It's early John Mulaney. Yeah, I don't know. I don't get Tom Jones even a little bit. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. No,
I think he's I think he's got real soul, and I hesitate to say that, about, because in a way you could make a case that he was just a sort of a cultural appropriator, but I mean, stuff like Delilah and the Green Grass of Home, he was authentic doing anything, and because he loved music, and I think he only did music that he loved. And it's like I'm so old and the cliches just never stop. But I now that I'm older, when I was younger, I liked being around people I agreed with, and now that I'm older, I like being around people that I believe, that are authentic. And I think he's totally authentic, and I don't know, the cheeky shit I could do without, but that's marketing. It's not. It's. I don't know. I think he's legit. I don't think he's making it up. He means it, and he can deliver. I don't know. I don't want to. I can't. We can go so far pushing Tom Jones. I'll agree to that.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it's one of those things. If it was going to happen for me, it probably would have happened by now. I don't think it's going to happen.
All right.
And that's okay. That's okay. Okay. So I am going to go back to the 80s movie soundtrack. Well, maybe for my last two, but certainly for my number 14. So there was a compilation, and my computer is dying anyway, it's called High School Reunion, and you can find it on Spotify. It features nothing but songs that were hits on 80s soundtracks, and some of my favorite, there are a lot of really good songs on this compilation. So tribute albums often don't yield high results. I would say this is a case where it does. And my next selection is from that album called High School Reunion, and that is a cover of If You Were Here, the Thompson Twins song that was featured prominently in 16 Candles. And the band, which I'm struggling to get, Kitty Hawk is the name of the band.
16 Candles had a pretty good soundtrack, and that was a highlight for sure.
Any John Hughes movie really had great soundtrack selections.
Yeah, they were pretty good, pretty good. My final one is I don't want to. This is not one of my all-time favorites, but just as a sop to John Prine. 2 years ago, we put out his Spotify single, and the B-side was an acoustic cover of Stevie Wonder's "I Just Called to Say I Love You." It's real. It's playing at the heartstrings. It's probably at any other time in any other place would be considered a little over the top. I mean, the song itself is pretty over the top, but
yeah, as a Stevie Wonder fan, it's certainly not a Stevie Wonder song that I appreciate very much, but
yeah, I think it was played so much when it was out. It was number one for I remember it almost being like half a year of just constantly hearing it, and that ruined it for me. But the John Prine version, again, I 100% believe him. Like, it is corny, it is a little over the top, but I think John Prine is he in his hands. It's no vice. He he really does find something in a song, and you're talking about two master songwriters. To have for John Prine to basically say, you need to go back and give this one another chance. I take him at his word. I think he's right. I think he's made a case for maybe going back and giving the song another try. Maybe that's the best thing I could say. If John Prine were to pass away, that would be a really big hole in music because there's really nobody else who really can do the thing he does and has done for 40 years or whatever it is. Like, he is a singularity, and he the fact that he votes in favor of this song, give it a chance and see if you can find something in it, because I did.
Okay, so for my last one, so I'm going to mention the version that I probably would include if it was available on Spotify, but the version that I have will have to do, and it's good. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but anyway, a song I really love from the '80s is Lindsey Buckingham's "Trouble" from his first solo effort, and so Of Montreal did a really good cover version of it that I don't know. Was it like a live radio performance that they did this song?
Yeah, but it doesn't have crowd noise. It doesn't sound loud.
Well, yeah, like
live.
It was live in the studio, right? Live in a radio studio. Yeah, and it was great. It's the best cover of that song that I know of. And anyway, the version that is available on Spotify that I'm totally happy to include on it is Matthew Sweet and Susanna Hoff. Susanna Hoff's doing the vocals on it, and great one in its own right. Matthew Sweet and Susanna Hoff's put together 3 volumes of cover albums that have great song selections. They're not the most adventurous arrangements of these covers, but the picks that they make are spot on. Like, they make great choices in the songs that they choose. I wish they were a little bit more adventurous with their versions of them, but here's one that I think works pretty well.
Are you a She and Him fan?
Somewhat. Probably not to the extent that you are.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think they also their cover selection, I think, is good, and their arranging and ideas on it, I think, are similar. All right, so I have one left.
Yeah, I would say the She and Him versions of the covers that they do are probably a bit more their own thing than what the Matthew Sweet and Susanna Hoff's versions of the covers that they do.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't like those albums. I bought the first one, and I thought this should be the best thing I've ever heard, because the Bangles had taste. Susanna Hoff has taste.
Well, and Matthew Sweet and Susanna Hoff has taste. Like, the taste is there. It's just I think you feel like you're just hearing a faithful cover of it, and so then what's the point? I'll just go listen to the original version of this.
Yeah, I think you have a point. All right, well, I think I'm going to go out just by blackpilling the entire thing with Shoo Shoo from Oakland, California. And I don't know that I would have ever crossed paths with him had I not lived in Oakland when I did for as long as I did. I associate the band with Jamie Stewart, who I think one of his parents was in the band We Five, who did When I Woke Up This Morning, You Were on My Mind, one of the most saccharine, nauseating oldies of all time. And I have a theory deep down that, like, I'm guessing Jamie from Shoo Shoo's had to hear had to hear that song so many times that he's just decided he's going to just atomize it and go as far the other direction as possible. I'm overstating the case a little bit, but Shoo Shoo's a little on the extreme side, especially for my pedestrian ears. Some of it's over the top, and I think others would find it cringy, but I believe him. I don't think that it's a put on. I think this is his real shit, and he does a cover of Bauhaus's "All We Ever Wanted Was Everything." That I don't think I never thought it would be possible to outdo Bauhaus in drama, and he does. That is a remarkable feat. I mean, Bauhaus was as arty as they come. I think, especially in their era, that's what makes them great. Is they were credible as the arty types, and then they could bring it. You know, I think their cover of Ziggy Stardust is fucking great, and I think David Bowie thought so too. So anyway, I'm like Bauhaus to me is 100% legit, and Shoo Shoo somehow found a way to out dramatize Bauhaus on one of their most kick-ass songs, one of the greatest bass performances. God, I love David J. What a great fucking bassist. And Shoo Shoo, at least they're not going to out bass him, so they don't try. They do their own spin on the arrangement, and their arrangement's great too. So the cover of Bauhaus, All We Ever Wanted Was Everything by Shoo Shoo is how I close out. I'm blackpilling here at the end. I think I tried to be as positive as long as I could. It just couldn't make it 15.
Okay. All right, and so yeah, our lists are 15. I think we both have some bonus tracks up on our lists when you go on Spotify to look at them. So,
yep,
you know, little extra incentive for you to look up the lists, get some bonus tracks.
And I threw in some URLs to some YouTube videos for some songs that aren't on Spotify that you must hear. Age of Chance's cover of Kiss and Aztec Camera's cover of Van Halen's Jump. It's just it's gonna pound your skull. You just got to copy and paste.
I'm standing here against the record machine right now.
I have a pet theory that the acoustic cover genre really stems from that Aztec acoustic cover of Jump, and I don't know that there's ever been better.
What year was it?
85.
Yeah, that is going back. Yeah.
So, like, literally within a year of Van Halen's version, he comes up with this incredible acoustic remix, and I don't think he's being ironic. I really don't. I could be naive. Please look it up.
Yeah, we'll have to do the history of the acoustic cover at some point.
Yeah,
we'll explore this. We'll get to the bottom of it.
That was a fairly. I think we warned people this was a fairly thorough airing this week. We went 15 deep on 80s covers, and we had a heavy week in news. So,
yeah.
But if everybody's quarantined, this would be the time to maybe go to tell the affiliates we're going to run long.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, you know, always happy if anybody makes the time to give us a listen. And if they do have the time, they have a little bit more to listen to this week, and you know, we'll keep on coming. As always, physically distanced and
yes.
socially socially acceptable, hopefully.
Well, yeah, and not to be too on the nose, but in the circumstances, if you read the news today, if we're here next week, that means we got lucky. It means that
Right.
that means that the Reaper passed by this week. You know what I mean? Like we're really, it feels like things are really starting to bite a little bit. We're talking, it's April 5th of 2020. We're recording this. It's really feeling like it's real everywhere, where it may not have been even a week or two ago, even though it felt weird. It feels dangerous, really dangerous, I think, for just about everybody at this point. I hope so, because it is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody out there, just stay safe, stay inside.
Yeah. Take
You know,
care of yourselves. Be safe. This is
yeah.
real. I'm shocked. I had to make a pharmacy run this week, and I couldn't believe how much traffic I was seeing, and how many people out and about, and how many things were open. I was a little taken aback, but I think in the last couple of days, I think everybody's pretty much figured out this is nothing to fuck with.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the case, because when spring rolls around, in places that have long winters, it's always tough to stay indoors, and usually you don't have to do that, but this now you do. So yeah, just stay home, listen to music. Hopefully you listen to us. We're happy to have you, and we're happy
Oh,
to keep you company.
definitely, definitely. And I'm not, yeah, it's not being glib, and I'm not repeating it for no reason. But again, to come back next week and have an opportunity next week is a luxury compared to what many people are going for. I'm going to remain optimistic. If you don't remain optimistic, it lowers your immunity. That's the interesting part about being human. Is like feeling bad makes it more likely you'll feel bad. So again, we've said this many times. That's what to me. If you're trying to get your brain to release pleasure chemicals, I can't think of anything on earth that's going to more consistently deliver throughout the entire span of your life than music. That's just how I
It
feel.
works for me.
Yeah. All right. God willing, we'll see you next time.
I'll see you next week.